The New York Mets have a chance to strengthen the back end of their bullpen alongside names like Reed Garrett and Edwin Diaz. There's one name in particular in this free agent market that nobody's talking about. Let's get into it. All right, Mets fans, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the True Mets Talk podcast. It's your boy CP. While everybody's busy focused on the Juan Soto sweepstakes and talking about, where he's going to end up, the whole Pete Alonso discussion, there are other areas of this team that David Stearns needs to figure out, and that is the bullpen in terms of pairing a couple of free agents or maybe even some re-signed candidates like Ryan Stanek and Brooks Raley alongside the names that are going to be present in this bullpen, whether it's Reed Garrett or Jose Butto and definitely Edwin Diaz. We are talking about one free agent in particular that nobody is talking about right here in the True Mets Talk podcast. Before we talk about this one name, make sure you go ahead and hit the thumbs up on this video. If you enjoy the content, subscribe to the channel. If you haven't done so already, for all you returning subscribers, I definitely appreciate it. Please do make sure to make your thoughts and opinions known down below. And we know that the Mets bullpen has a lot of impending free agents. To name a few, Brooks Raley, Adam Ottavino, and Ryan Stanek. Really, the only two of those three are going to be Brooks Raley and Ryan Stanek in terms of reconsideration for a potential re-sign. And this is going to be a very interesting move or process of moves for David Stearns this offseason because we know the way he operates. We know he's not going to go presumably after the big free agent target names. He has to add another lefty, whether it's re-signing Brooks Raley or going after a guy that I've talked about in my previous bullpen video that I dropped, and AJ Minter, one of my favorite candidates out there in the bullpen free agent market. And of course, I went over some other names in that video, and I actually had this guy right here in that video. I didn't talk about him much. He was on my list toward the end of that video, but let me interest you in a name of Yimi Garcia. Yimi Garcia is such an underrated reliever, and the fact that, let's get it out of the way, there's a big elephant in the room. Yes, he had elbow problems last year, and yes, he's going into an age 34 season in 2025. Again, suffered an elbow injury, I believe, mid-season, right after he got traded to the Seattle Mariners from the Toronto Blue Jays. Unfortunately, suffered that injury, was trying to come back, and I believe during his recovery, suffered another setback that ended his season with the Seattle Mariners after he went to that organization. But honestly, this is a big if, because he obviously still has to recover in an appropriate manner this offseason to be ready to go back out there in 2025 and beyond, depending on what his next contract's going to be. I'm assuming it's going to be for a one-year deal, given the elbow problems. But if the Mets get hold and get news of this guy recovering in a manner where he's projected to start and be ready for spring training and compete for a bullpen spot, it's a no-brainer to call him up, call his agent up, and try to work out a deal, because it's not going to cost you much. And these are the low-value type of signings, right, that David Stearns is known to prioritize in the bullpen. And I'm going to be really upfront with you all. Yimi Garcia and the type of pitcher that he is really reminds me of Ryan Stanek. And maybe not so much the 2024 production, but if you take a look at the statistics of the 2023 values that each of these guys put up for their respective teams, they have a lot of similarities. And I've already been talking about a guy like Ryan Stanek potentially being a re-signed candidate for the Mets, but I do think the upside with a guy like Yimi Garcia is that much better. And you saw that in 2024 with the lack of sample size across only 39 innings, albeit, but he has just as electric stuff, and he has more of a vast arsenal than Ryan Stanek does. Ryan Stanek is more so of a three-pitch arsenal pitcher. We know that he has a slider, a splitter, along with that fastball that can reach up to 100 miles per hour. Well, Yimi Garcia, you see here in the green text down below of that beautiful Savant page, that's actually taken from 2023, just because if I included the 2024 Savant page, it'd be a little bit skewed in terms of the amount of innings that he was only able to pitch. And I get that would be a concern factor for Mets fans. I understand it. But again, when you're talking about a one-year deal for the caliber of a reliever that Yimi Garcia is, again, if healthy, it would be an absolute no-brainer. Key words, if healthy. And we don't have any sort of news in terms of how this injury is progressing, but the upside of Yimi Garcia is something where we've seen him be a closer in certain scenarios, especially in the Blue Jays organization when a guy like Jordan Romano went down a couple seasons ago. We've seen him pitch in high leverage situations, right? More consistently than a guy like Ryan Stanek. And if you add this type of pitcher into the mix of the bullpen, you can slot Reed Garrett back down to your seventh inning role. You'll have an elite setup guy in Yimi Garcia, and then you'll kick it off to the ninth inning when you have Edwin Diaz. But, in comparison to Stanek's 3 pitches, this is the pitch distribution that Yimi Garcia has to offer. Predominantly goes with the 4-seam fastball. And Ryan Stanek, again, I'm drawing the comparisons between Garcia and Stanek, and the electricity factor that I love to see in the back end of any bullpen, particularly the Mets bullpen, because I think that is what produces the most success, especially when you get around to playoff times, or even just down the stretch of the season when you need lockdown innings from your back end guys. Ryan Stanek averaged about 97.5 miles per hour in his 4-seam fastball last season, and Yimi Garcia is not far behind at just over 96 miles per hour. So you lose a couple of ticks in terms of that miles per hour in the fastball, but the electricity factor is still there. Then you get into the curveball, then you get into the sweeper. After the sweeper, or I should say before the sweeper, he utilizes a sinker, which is a 2-seamer that he's able to throw between 94 and 95 miles per hour, but that's his worst pitch. So naturally, I decided not to include it here. But again, he is a 5-pitch arsenal type guy. And then lastly, at about 9.5% of the time, he goes to that changeup, which is always good to have in the back of your pocket. Now, again, with the Savant numbers, very similar in terms of the ability to get swing and miss, the ability to strike hitters out, just like Ryan Stanek is able to. But the thing that you get with Yimi Garcia that you don't get with Ryan Stanek, you don't get, or I guess you should say, you don't have to worry about the walks being a problem. Yimi Garcia, over the past couple of seasons, again, this guy's a 10-year vet in this league, is established and is proven, although the health history is a concern with a couple forearm injuries, elbow injuries, knee injuries in between. You don't get that walk rate that you get with Ryan Stanek. And we know what the Mets' problem was last season amongst their starting pitchers and their bullpen guys was the walks. So could David Stearns pivot to a Ryan Stanek-esque type of pitcher in the back end of the bullpen with more upside and more pitches to offer in a guy like Yimi Garcia, especially for that value that you see here on your screen, 1 year with $5 million? It's worth to sort of explore. I'm curious to see where this guy ends up, if not in a Mets uniform. Let me know what you think in the comments section. Would you all want to pursue a guy of this caliber, even given the injury history? Let me know in the comments section. Appreciate you all stopping by. Let's go Mets. See you all in the next episode. Peace.
Thank you for watching the True Mets Talk podcast. Make sure you're tapping on that notifications button and checking out all the latest content on the channel. Thank you.